Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. Hey,
Well,
hey everybody. Here we are. It's Wednesday. Wednesday night on the rec yard. Hope everybody is excited to see us, as excited as I am to see us.
and we are on the rec yard talking about a big subject, strip searches in the female prison. And so I'm looking for like a little bit of research, not that I didn't have enough of it, right? But I'm looking, and when I just put that in the search bar on all the platforms, Instagram, TikTok, all of it, thousands of videos popped up. People are asking about this.
People want to know, what is it like to be strip searched in prison? And I think people are, you know, you and I have had discussions about how, sorry, something was on my camera. How men, even incarcerated men, think with a certain perspective and lens about women's incarceration that is all about the male gaze and fantasy, and that's not the experience at all. And I think that drives some of the curiosity about women and strip searching, and it's actually not anything that should ever be a part of anyone's male gaze or fantasy, because it is to me, I don't know, we'll see if you agree, to me strip searching was probably the most dehumanizing thing that I consistently experienced through 20 years. Would you say it was at least in your top 3?
For sure. Oh, for sure. And I love how you said um, there's kind of an idea that a lot of, especially men, have of what goes on in a women's prison and how a strip search goes down, and they sexualize it. Let's just put it
Hmm.
out there. That's what happens. They have some kind of weird little thing in their mind, and they sexualize it. And there's absolutely nothing sexual on, especially on our end, as we're getting strip searched. And if it is on the mind of the person that's the staff worker taking care of that, we feel that, and it's
Oh,
cringy and creepy and awful. And yeah, so with that,
immediate.
Tunchi, in
Can I
my
wait? Can I say this though?
yeah,
Blair wants to say I'm showing off right now.
she usually is. Yeah, she usually
I'm
is.
showing off the collarbone and all that. I am. So thank you for noticing, Blair. And I do want to say hi to Elaine because she made it. Yay! Hey,
Hi, Elaine.
Elaine.
So happy to see you. Thanks for joining us.
And Veronica and Mindy are here, so we're super excited to see our numbers are growing. Marcy, I'm very
Yeah.
excited.
I'm excited too. I'm excited too. Okay, let me tell you this research about
Okay, yes,
strip
I'm sorry.
searches. Okay, so I'm on TikTok, right? That's my main app, right? So I'm on there, and I'm put that in the search engine, and I'm noticing that one individual
Oh boy.
has asked for descriptions of a strip search to females that talk about prison on TikTok. And I don't mean like he asked 3 people. I mean he asked like 20 people, and I
What?
answered him. He's the one that I answered. And I just wonder, like, are you just do you think it's that different between the 20 of us? No, we all thought it sucked. We
Right.
all thought it was degrading and horrible. And I just thought, I wonder what's going on with him. And I wish that I
Right.
hadn't answered his question.
Right.
So,
Right. Um, so, but before we, you have a video that you want to share with everybody. Before we see the video, should we should we tell everybody by policy, at least in our experience in Texas, how a strip search is supposed to go, so everybody can kind of have an idea of the technical process that this is supposed to, how this is supposed to happen, and then we can fill in the gaps of what that really feels like.
I
So
almost did. Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Let's do it. So, um,
So you're
do you
going into
just make,
visitation. We'll do it like this. So you're going into visitation, Marcy, and everybody gets stripped in and out at visitation for work at the back gate. But we'll use visitation because it's the most stressful to me because you're about to see your family. Um, so you're going into visitation, and what is the officer? What is the protocol? What do you know to do in that process?
so you go into the visitation room and there's probably already somebody getting strip searched out and you probably have to wait in line. And so you wait there facing the person getting strip searched. So if that's not awkward enough, but then when it's your turn, you step into this little space wherever they have designated the area for you to get naked at, and you do just that. You strip completely down, and you hold all of your clothes and your shoes in your hand, and you're going to hand each article of clothing to the officer one at a time. She's going to hopefully, she's going to have gloves on, but I've been stripped by plenty that didn't, which is odd. She's going to feel every part of your clothes, your panties, your bra, shirt, bottom, socks, shoes, and make sure that there's nothing hidden in any of those clothes. And while she's doing that, you're standing there naked looking at her. And then, so then she's like, lift up your nose. And she wants to make sure there's nothing in your nose. She's going to check behind your ears. If you have hair like me, you're going to move your hair and fold your ear over so she can see. She wants you to run your finger. Policy says, and not all of them abide by that, but she wants you to run your finger around your gum line to make sure there's nothing hidden there. You're going to open your mouth, stick your tongue out, and then stick your tongue up so she can see there. Then you're going to lift your breasts. And then she's going to tell you, even if you don't have a stomach to lift, she's supposed to tell you to lift your stomach and make sure there's nothing hidden there. She's going to have you squat, cough. She's going to have you turn around. I don't remember if we squat and cough again when we turn around, but we do bend over and spread our hiney apart for them to see in and make sure nothing's there. We're going to show the bottom of our feet. And she'll just say feet and hands, and you do this with your hands and the bottom of your feet. And then you can get back dressed. You can pick your clothes up off of the dirty floor that they're wadded up on, where people have been coming in and out, and put them back on and go on out to visit. And you don't wash your hands in the middle of that. So
right. Yes. So that is the technical aspect of, how you described it's literally it's as non-invasive but closest to invasive as they can get, because they are up your nose, in your mouth, in your orifices without actually getting they have to get a warrant, the warden's permission to do anything invasive. But strip searching is not just, getting pat searched like you do at, the airport. It's not like that. It is being completely naked, vulnerable, and having someone inspect the inner parts of your body completely, and your clothing. And there is no privacy in that. There's no, but it's supposed to be a very technical, hand me your clothes, this, and you do have officers that do it very robotically, and that makes it actually a lot better. But that's not usually the way that goes. So I will show the video. We'll look at the video and discuss.
You didn't look at it yet.
No, I haven't looked at it yet. So
it's just a little montage I put together.
Okay. Where's the sound?
Uh-oh.
Oh man. Wait. Hold on. Girl, we're still getting it. I'm so proud of you right now. Okay.
You know that when you're in prison, you get strip searched like all the time, not when you just get arrested.
There are several reasons in the penitentiary that you might get stripped: going to and from work, going to and from visitation. Anytime there's a shakedown or lockdown, if your cubicle or cell's getting searched, they might strip you. An officer, if she thinks you might have something on you, she can strip you with really no cause. If they see you passing something.
Be prepared to get butt ass naked. Squat down. Open your butt cheeks. Cough hard twice.
Theo scream at a girl to show pink. She told her to bend down farther, spread wider. I want to see pink.
It's degrading, it's humiliating, and makes you feel less of a human.
When you are getting strip searched in jail or prison, guards will absolutely make fun of your body. And if you have your period, in some facilities, they will make you take your tampon out in front of them.
Did you know that when you're in prison, you get strip searched like all the time, not when you just get arrested?
So, yeah, and we definitely have to highlight what Carrie mentioned, because as women, this is certainly, you know, much harder for us to do than men. And I'm sure that men experience a level of degradation as well. But for us ladies, as Carrie mentions, when we are on our cycles, when we're on our period, you got to take that off. You've got to remove it. You got to take your pad off. You got to pull your tampon out. And, I know many people have heard me tell the story at the back gate at Lane Murray with the host squad bosses and 20 women in that little tiny strip shack. You got a tampon in there. I see it, pull it out. And having to do that. And it's like, Marcy, I don't know if you coped like this, but this is how I coped. It was like, I don't have any time to be embarrassed. I don't have any time to be angry. I just do it. Just do it.
Well, you have to just do it. You don't have a choice. And you're getting yelled at in that particular scenario. Now, not every guard is going to be aggressive and yell at you while you're getting strip searched, but the field squad bosses in the strip shack are going to yell the entire time. Not one of them, not two of them, however many are in there are going to be yelling the entire time. And they're going to make you feel like hell. And if you have bled out, you quite possibly might get ridiculed by them. It's horrible. It's horrifying. That situation right there is the worst strip search, including the first one I had in the penitentiary, which was a special kind, right? With flashlights and everything. But the field squad strip shack, that was it. You were yelled at from the time you got on. When you walk in the door, if you have a tampon, throw your tampon and pads in the trash can, get in line, get your clothes off, get over here, I mean, just the whole time. And then when it's time to get your clothes on, they're yelling at you to rush to get your clothes on. And then at Lane Murray, there's a sink, and sometimes it's working. Now we go from work in the fields to no hand washing to the strip search. So if you have to change your tampon, you're doing so with sometimes muddy and dirty hands. And that's if you're lucky enough to have brought your own tampon, because they're not going to give you one in there.
Right.
You have to, it's completely unsanitary. But then afterwards, you might not get to wash your hands before you go to lunch. And if you do get to wash your hands, it's going to be bam, bam, bam. Because she's like 3 seconds at the sink. It's no soap up and lather up. It's and out. And that's what it is.
Yeah, and you make a good point that, we get strip searched really at almost at every point, right? Like depending on your job, if you have a boss that is more lenient, they'll say they stripped you, but really technically like the kitchen and the laundry and SSIs, like you're supposed to be stripped in and out at work anytime you leave the building. And it just depends on your bosses if that's going to happen. And that can be, not as bad. Visitation, more stressful, your family. Back gate, when you're going on transport, that's another level. But that top tier belongs to the host squad bosses, period. I don't know what's happening in my camera. Because there's this, we'll have to do a whole video on field squad and the culture of the host squad. Okay. And anybody that's listening or watching, the host squad is the field squad. It's what you see in the movies when people are on chain gangs and they're out in the fields, very very much like plantation slave labor stuff, right? That is exactly what it is. And that is the culture of the people that typically work on the field. I think the units are different. Mountain View, again, wasn't quite the same as the Lane Murray. I was on the host squad at Lane Murray when I was 18, and it was horrifying because it is just exactly like you described. And so when they're telling you, and we got stripped by host squad bosses when we went to a peer education conference at Hobby Marcy, and they stripped us outside. It was 33 degrees. They had us all line up. There was 30 of us, and we're holding all of our stuff in our hand. And I remember it was so cold, I was just stepping back and forth between each foot, and they were screaming, "Lift your gut up, you dumb bitch. Lift your gut up. Oh, you how you like Hobby? How you like Hobby, you little snowflake from Mountain View." And my friend was just crying. She just was like tears dripping down her face. And it was like you said, remove your tampon and your pad before you even get up there. So you're standing in line and standing next to a woman who is literally just bleeding onto the ground. Like
barefoot.
Yeah,
You're barefoot. Everyone's barefoot walking through the mess. It's humiliating and horrifying. And it does, just like one of the TikTokers said, it makes you feel like less of a person. So
completely degrading, especially as a woman, because I can't even tell you how it was such a common thing to see in the strip shack or wherever we're getting stripped in the education room when the vocationals are leaving, drops of blood on the floor, like bleeding, just on the floor because you've got to stand there with your stuff. Yeah, and the degradation, the verbal abuse, right? Like when I mentioned earlier, like, man, I hope I get somebody that robotically strips me, because you get the ones, and I've been in those rooms where they're, especially during lockdown, they're making fun of your body, they're making fun of your body odors, they're making fun of your clothes, and it's a group of female officers that are doing this. It's strange, right? Like I always had the worst degrading experiences with female officers while I was getting strip searched.
Just the idea that it's already such a, I mean, it's a completely humbling experience. You have no control. You're literally naked. I mean, everything's there. But then when they look at you funny or speak on your genitalia even, and I've heard that and seen that, and just it's embarrassing. Everyone in the room is horrified. You know, it's just, I don't even know how to describe how awful it makes you feel. And so why are they doing it? You know, why is this policy in place? Right? They're trying to keep everybody safe. They're trying to keep contraband from coming into the dorms. And, you know, possibly if we worked out in the field, like worst case, craziest scenario is one of our crazy family members could leave some kind of weapon out there and we could go find it randomly in the cornfield while we're there.
Right.
Or, you know, I mean, I'm just saying this is, you know, and so they need to strip us to make sure we don't have this coming in, because what else are we going to bring from the garden? A tomato? You know, I mean, a rock possibly, that they're inside the unit also, you know. So but even if that, I just wonder what it would look like if they treated us like a person while they were doing it. I mean, just like you said, the officers that are kind of like a robot about it, that they're just doing exactly what policy says, and they have to verbalize it. Like they have to say nose, ears, mouth, and that's exactly the ones that do that. You'll get in front of them and you'll start getting undressed, and you know the order that they've been trained to say, and they say it just like they've been trained: nose, ears, mouth, breast, stomach, squat, cough, turn around. I mean, that's exactly what. And it's just your memory muscles, your muscle memory is doing it, and your feelings aren't there yet. I mean, it's just there and it's done. And so that's one way, right? But definitely the menstrual cycle that's something has to be changed with that. For any that can never be okay. That can never be okay. If you do have to change your tampon in front of an officer, and I had to in front of my parole officer recently. Yeah. And it was horrifying for her. She hated it too, but I don't know if it was in a situation. She's really professional. And so I found myself apologizing to her, like, I'm sorry you have to do this, because I felt bad for her, because I could see how ugly it made her feel to have to watch me take a pee test, you know, and a urine analysis. And then she said, and I have to ask you to remove your tampon. And I said, okay, it's okay. Like she, you know, and that didn't make me feel ugly. And it was embarrassing, but it wasn't humiliating. It didn't make me feel like less of a person.
Right.
And the way she handled that, she was professional. And then I could also tell she didn't think less of me because I had to do that, or make me feel less than. And I think that's so important when we're dealing with people that are going to come back to our communities.
Right.
You know?
Right. Because you make there's a big distinction, right, between something that is just, it's embarrassing. It's something we have to do in the name of security. I don't think we necessarily really have to, but the state says, okay, I get it. But there's a difference between being embarrassed and being humiliated. And almost every single incident, I think, of being extremely humiliated in prison centers around some type of strip search. And the people that were using that. I always said it was abuse. I always said it was abuse when y'all strip search us and you're demeaning and the things you say while we're naked. What other time are we that vulnerable? So you have a room full of naked, vulnerable, the most vulnerable a woman can get, naked and bleeding on the floor. And you're, you know, the officer's like, you bitches stink. Why are y'all, girl, you need to lift that gut up. What else you got under that big fupa of yours, you know, and then laughing. And it creates, like you said, we're coming back to the community. And just even talking about it, I feel the rage inside, not just for myself, but and I wrote one of my stories for the Texas Observer was about just standing there witnessing while a woman was getting strip searched and the officer was just berating her about, you know, your mom bring all these kids up here. You should be ashamed of yourself. And what kind of mother are you? And she's just standing there holding her panties in her shoes, just staring at the floor. Like, because there's nothing I could do. There's nothing you could have done. We just have to take it because we want to see our family, or, you know, we don't want a case. And I mean, I think it's an extreme abuse that women suffer that's not talked about a lot is the way we're treated when we're strip searched.
You mentioned something right there that's a whole nother episode, is when families are thrown up in your face. That's you can never tell me anything my entire incarceration that could make me feel more guilty about the trauma that my actions caused, you know. But for that to be thrown, that's not any way to heal, or it's not conducive to anything positive or healing or rehabilitating.
Yeah, and it goes hand in hand with the type of abuse that we're talking about. And Elaine nailed it there. It's psychological abuse. And I say this often, and I've heard you try to articulate this as well, is the unique ways that we suffer as women through incarceration are deeply psychological. And that's not to undermine the stuff that men go through. It's just that the ways they harm us are very psychological and emotional. And it's in ways like that, because you tell a person, oh, you know, they said ugly things to me while I was getting dressed. And people are like, well, you know, okay. I mean, but you didn't get assaulted or stabbed. Yes, I did, straight through my soul. And when you have to endure that 2 or 3 times a day, it's just as bad as any type of physical assault. I see that we have a guest.
Yay.
She's ready. And look, I think her Wi-Fi is working pretty decent. Yay!
Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi, Lainey. So, y'all, I was incarcerated with Lainey, and I'm not sure, Tunchi, if you guys ever crossed paths because both of y'all were incarcerated at the same time. But Lainey was actually my across the way bunkie for a couple years.
A long time. I think it was like almost 3 years we were bunkies.
Yes.
So do you have the good dirt on Marcy? Well, we can do a whole show on that.
I could tell you some stories about Marcy Marie, but Marcy Marie could tell some stories about me too. So we're just going to keep.
Oh, okay. We'll save that for
right.
another.
Good idea. Good idea.
That's
I was going to say, don't get Brittany involved because she's already like, when are you going to tell him all the stuff? I'm like, no.
If we know you, we know the stuff. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We love you anyway. We love you anyway.
Yes, I love you too, friend, so much. I'm excited that you're on the show, and I was so excited.
Me too.
What happened is we just put out a little post about, hey, y'all, don't forget, we're talking about strip searches tonight. And so Lainey did a lot of time, and she started her time as a very young woman.
I was 16.
The rules were a little bit different for strip searches. And so you had mentioned that, and of course we want to talk about that because it's huge. So I don't know where we want to start.
Well, I initially got locked up at 16. I did 29 years and 8 months flat. I did not go home. And so when I first got locked up, I got locked up in 1989, and I did 3 months in juvie, then I got certified as an adult. And then from there, I got my time in 91. When I hit reception in Riverside, I was 17. And that was, February of 1991. At that time, I hadn't had an encounter with anything other than the initial horror of being a teenager and going into reception, and they tell you, open and spread and this and that, because county jail was different. I was a baby in county jail, and they treated me like I was a baby. They were real. Everyone was very nice to me in county jail for the most part. But when I hit prison that first day, I was horrified. I cried the whole time. I was on my cycle when I had pulled chain, and that was a whole thing itself. And then in September of the year I got locked up, I escaped from prison. And first female that actually escaped, I climbed the fence. I was in medium custody at the time. I climbed the fence. I was gone 10 and a half hours. When I got caught, they put me in AdSeg on reception center. And the first thing they did is they took me to a cell, and I remember the warden was there, Warden Moten, and there was cameras on me, videoing everything, and there were men all there, and she's like, you need to strip. And I just totally absolutely flipped and lost my crap. I was like, I'm not stripping in front of men. And she said, you're going to strip, or I'm going to send them in there, and we will strip you down ourselves. And that was my first thing with that. I stripped on video camera in front of, I don't know how many people it was, men and women. Then when I got housed, I was housed in AdSeg. We were still being
Marty,
stripped by females. So we have to explain all that, right? Okay.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say, so they took you to AdSeg, and just for someone that maybe has never been to prison, so you're in your cell being stripped, or the cell
No,
doors
they
open?
put me in a shower. They put me in the shower, and showers in SEG on reception center are nothing but an open shower with bars on the
Yes.
front. There's no curtain. There's
Nothing.
nothing. There's nothing. It's absolutely open, and anyone passing
And it's
by,
right by the main hall. It's right by the main hall and reception.
It's by the rec door. It's by the main hall. It's by the admin, where anybody can come through. And then the guards sit right in front, and they don't discriminate. Male guards, female guards, they didn't discriminate between that. And so even when you shower, it's an open shower, and anybody passing by at any time can see in your shower.
So that's where you're getting stripped with male officers on camera, which I've been stripped on camera, and I had forgotten until you said that right now. Gosh. Oh, okay. Do you remember where you were?
Oh yeah, no, I remember.
Okay.
So I got housed. So they decided that I was going to live in admin seg indefinitely for escaping from prison. And so I'd been on reception, I think 6 months, and they shot me to Mountain View. I cut my throat and I tried to kill myself and almost succeeded. So they housed me in, there was this program at the time, and it was a psych program, and I forget what it was called, but they housed me in the psych center for an indefinite period of time because I was a threat to myself. And so when they let me out of that program, they put me in Mountain View in ADSEG. And I guess I'd been down there for about 2 or 3 years. And I did a total of 6 years and 8 months in ADSEG before they let me into closed custody. I'd been down there, and David Ruiz, I don't know if people are familiar with him. He's a popular, famous writer for Texas, and he filed the David Ruiz versus State of Texas lawsuit in the 70s and started prison reform from what Texas used to be to what it is now. He was pivotal. What he did was pivotal in creating that change. But he, on behalf of the male inmates, filed a lawsuit, a sexual discrimination lawsuit against TDC, because the policy stated that men could pat and strip search women and women offenders, and women guards could pat, search, and strip search male offenders. But the thing is that TDC did not have men stripping the women. They only had women stripping the men. So the men wanted that to stop, because the same way that women are degraded by other women, the women would also degrade the men, and they would make fun of their penis size. They would make fun of their body. If God forbid, a guy get an erection because he's in front of a woman and he hasn't been with a woman for 20 years, and they made fun of him. And so David put all of this in a lawsuit, and instead of doing what the right thing would be, and TDC saying, okay, so it needs to be same gender stripping, they said, okay, well, we're going to stop preventing the males from stripping the females. And we're going to stop preventing the males from pat searching the females. This was in, I want to say 93, 94-ish in TDC. And so one day everything is fine, and okay, so let me precursor this by saying in ADSEG, you get, I don't know if y'all had an ADSEG thing. This was Mountain View, okay?
I want to make sure that anybody knows in Texas, it's administrative segregation. It's solitary confinement. That's what it is. That's the term that maybe you've heard, that maybe you don't know. If she's saying ADSEG, she means she's in a solitary cell.
23 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't have a roommate. You don't have rec groups. You don't see anybody. You don't touch anybody. So nothing. When you have your visits and everything, you are escorted, chained, everything, and then taken to see your family in chains. And so when you showered, you got strip searched. You took off all your clothes at your cell door, and a officer, and on Mountain View at that time, you had to have on a gown. When you went to shower, you had to wear a gown. You could not have on panties or bra. You had on nothing underneath it. So what they wanted you to do was take off your gown, squat, cough, turn around, bend over, show your butt crack, show your feet, make sure, just like a normal strip search. And then you could get dressed, and then you turned around with your property in your hand, your shower stuff, and you turned around and you got handcuffed and they escort you. Well, it was shower time, and you know, showers are precious because you don't have hot water in your cells on Mountain View at that time. You had no hot water in your cell. You didn't have hot pots. You didn't have stingers. You had no appliances that you could heat up anything with. And so you wanted to get that one hot shower a day. And so it was shower time, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm next in line for shower. And everyone in SEG had already gotten word that the male officers were pat searching women upstairs, out of SEG in population. And we couldn't believe it. And, the word was that we were going to be getting stripped by men. And there was some of the old school girls that were down there with me was Lizelle Rossio and Reggie White, Bobby Joe. Oh, I don't remember who else. There was a bunch of us down there, Jimbo. And so they come and we were just like, well, I'm not getting stripped. I'm not getting stripped. And everyone's like, well, we're not getting stripped. Well, it was summertime and I was on my cycle and it was shower time and I was going to go shower. And sure enough, there was this officer named Mr. Head, and he was a older gentleman. He was very, very polite, very respectful, never disrespectful, never sexualized anything. He and the other guy that was working, I can't remember this officer's name to save my life. I've tried all day. They come to the door and they're like, hey, Swartz, are you going to shower? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to shower. And they're like, we need to go ahead and strip. And my mouth dropped open and I was like, what? And I said, you need to get a female. And they're like, no. And they start going into this long spiel about Warden. It was Warden Baggett, about what Warden Baggett said, that we're going to start stripping y'all and they're not getting a female. And I was like, are you serious? And I just started immediately. I was bawling. I was like, I'm on my cycle. I want to shower. And they're like, you're going to have to strip. And Mr. Head, I could tell it was really choking him up. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I don't want to do this. And the other guy, I wish I could remember saying, he was like, we don't want to do this, Swartz, but we have to do our job. And I remember just bawling and just being so humiliated and so traumatized and stripping. And it wasn't just like, even now, I was on my period, and so there's these freaking guys right there, and I got blood running down my legs, and I'm having to do all this. And I remember thinking, man, there's got to be better than this. But I did it. I stripped, and Reggie stripped, and Jimbo stripped. And then we didn't strip anymore because all of us, and I can't remember if Sherry Nance was on the unit. I feel like Sherry Nance was on the unit at the time, but there was somebody upstairs. I know that Bobby Joe was. Bobby Joe had done a 15 down there. She had done 15 days punitive. And when she went up, I know that she and some other women up there, they got together. They filed a writ and they got us to do affidavits. And everyone that had stripped, everyone that had gotten pat searched, we all signed affidavits, rewrote affidavits, and we got stopped. The Coryell County judge filed an injunction and he stopped it. So the policy still stands the same, but they amended it. They amended the policy to read that only in case of emergency where no other female officer where a female officer cannot be found or gotten a hold of. And that's only in case of emergencies, so that type of stuff doesn't happen. But, one of the things that we brought up is that the majority of women in prison have been sexually abused. They have trauma. They have sexually abusive relationship trauma. And when we're being pat searched and we're being felt up and we're being strip searched, all that does is bring back up all of that trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And Lenny, I remember I had just got to prison the first time when I was 18 and they had just stopped. And I remember the girls telling me, well, when we were talking about being stripped and I'm learning the ropes and everything, they're like, well, girl, just recently they stopped the men from pat searching us. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And that they were for a short time strip searching because of that, because oftentimes TDCJ, instead of doing the right thing, they'll dig their heels in and say,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, guess what? Then everybody will get, and then something has to happen drastically to get them to back off. They're like that about almost everything. But I do remember when this happened because I just got to prison. And
Yeah.
I mean, the Prison Rape Elimination Act now makes sure that, if you're receiving federal funds, you're not to do any of the things against PREA standards. And, a lot has changed since then. But what hasn't changed is the very degrading way it feels as a woman to be strip searched, because just of what you said, right? Like the history of sexual abuse and trauma
Yes.
that most women endured before prison, during prison, it is automatically triggered, and there's not a sensitivity to that.
No.
It's just, you know, when I tell you to strip, you strip, get naked, everybody get naked. It just, even in the way, like when Marcy, when you said that earlier, like, they're like, okay, everybody in here, get naked. Like, oh, like my stomach turned, because like I can feel what that feels like all over again. And here you are all these years later, still deeply affected by that
Yes.
incident.
No, absolutely.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly. First, thank you so much for sharing that with everyone, because it's something that needs to be heard, and you're very brave,
Thank
but
you.
just the fact that that happened so many years ago, and it's still there. That doesn't go away. We are on a healing journey, but we're far from healed from our trauma that we endured while we were incarcerated. And it's not right, and it's still happening. It's not happening as far as the men. Now, you brought up the video camera, and so I want to talk about that real quick, because that is, in those situations I have had, and of course it was when I was out of control. It was in the middle of my sentence when I lost my shit, and I have been videotaped, and there was men present there.
Yeah.
But it was like in the background, and honestly I was so out of it that the trauma was in here. I don't even remember seeing
But I
them or
mean,
who it
there's so
was.
many times though. It's so many situations where they use your nakedness as a vulnerability, and they use that as a weapon. Because I've been to Psych Center these many times. I had attempted suicide, and God, at 5 or 6 times, and you're stripped down and you're put naked into a cell, and it's male officers as well as females that come and check and make sure you're alive. And if they can't see you, they make you get where they can see you. Being on the whole squad on Hobby, because Murray had the inside hallway that they stripped, but Hobby, as Jennifer was talking about earlier, they have an outside strip area that everyone goes through. It's a strip pen that everyone goes through. Well, when you're on whole squad on Hobby, you get stripped in that pen, and there's male officers on their horses right outside that can see directly inside. I mean, there is no even attempt, not even a small attempt, other than the little plastic curtains that they put around to shield you, to help you maintain your dignity, your modesty, or anything. It's always, you shouldn't have messed up. I mean, I can't even recall how many times I've heard or I've been told, oh, well, you shouldn't have came to prison. Oh, well, you should have done the right thing. Oh, well. And it's like, oh, well, in their minds, we deserve degradation and humiliation because we broke the law. And that's not true. Being away from your family, being away from life is your punishment. You don't have to beat me. You don't have to kick a down dog, because I'm already beaten. I'm already beating up myself. And that, I think, is what really does need to change about prison, is not so much even the circumstances, but the mentality of people, not just the prison guards, but the people. I mean, I see people on your comments all the time, Marcy, or, oh, well, you shouldn't have went to prison. Well, you know what, bitch, we all mess up. Everyone messes up. And the only difference between me messing up and Marcy and Jennifer messing up and the rest of the people that haven't went to prison is 9 times out of 10, you just haven't gotten caught. You didn't piss off the right person. You didn't do quite enough to go to jail, but it doesn't mean that you haven't messed up. It just means that you were smarter about it.
Right. That's the thing about the 3 of us and the 8% of the United States population that has a felony conviction. The fact is, the worst decision we've ever made in our life is on Front Street. But all of you that haven't been convicted, you have done plenty in your life that you would be embarrassed and horrified if everyone knew. And in some way, by us standing tall and growing and becoming better people, it almost offends some people.
Oh, it does. No, it does. It absolutely does. Like, we're supposed to stay at the bottom tier the entire life. And, when we are in prison, we're considered the dregs of society. And a lot of people feel that when we get out, we should still be the dregs of society, and some people do stay at the bottom, but that's because they don't always have somebody to help them get up to the top. But we are not only trying to rise above our past, we're trying to help everyone else get up and rise above also. And I think that's really important to continue to give forward.
Right. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is why we created this podcast. This is why we all do the work that we do, because we own our stories. And until we have the courage to own our stories and be vulnerable, just like what you shared, people don't know, like all the time, on social media or in the community, or even in the comments right now, people are like, I had no idea. When I wrote a piece about, how hard it was to have feminine products, period. That's a whole nother topic, right? I had a friend tell me after she read it, she said, Jennifer, I wrote you for years and you never mentioned this. I said, why would I have? I was embarrassed. And what could you have done? I didn't want you to be upset and I didn't want you to worry about me. And I was, really embarrassed that sometimes we had to use socks. Sometimes we had to bleed on the floor in visitation. Who wants to talk about that? But, I learned that until we start talking about these things, not in ways that re-traumatize us but in ways that make us feel empowered, that's how we educate people. And that is how we get change to happen in the system. So I'm glad that you said something on the post and that you were like, I've got something to say. And we've told everybody, hey, y'all tell us, send us messages. We would love to have everybody on here and have these great discussions.
So I appreciate y'all having me. Totally. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Lainey. I want to touch on the ways that we cope with that. Because in that same scenario, that horrifying scenario of a host squad, all 3 of us have worked in that host squad and been in that type of environment in a strip search, yelling, and in the same breath, all 3 of us have experienced a little bit of camaraderie amongst the ladies. And almost, I remember times in there where we're like, you have to make light of it, right? Mm-hmm. It's like one of those situations where you either have to laugh or cry. Mm-hmm. And I remember a little bit of kind of a giggling, like trying to cope. And I didn't really realize until I got home that was absolutely 100% of a coping mechanism to protect myself, because it was, so what are ways? Are there any ways, the 2 of you, what do y'all do to cope with that? And what did you do in the midst of that to cope with it?
Honestly, so when I was inside, I listened to the radio and I read voraciously. I worked out like a maniac. And because I was up at 6 o'clock every day, hitting the rec yard at 7 when I didn't have to work, doing all day long and having exercise class and stuff. And it was just to have some, and so I've been in therapy since I got out. I've been out 3.5 years now. And I've been in therapy once a week ever since I got out. I have to have therapy. That's one of the main things for me is I need to process and not just deal with what happened in prison, but what got me to prison and what happened as a child and what's happening now, because, you know, everything is just compounded and you compartmentalize. And I realized seeing my therapist that I did that a lot. I compartmentalized, you know, and I just chose sometimes I chose good coping mechanisms and sometimes I chose bad. For years, it was relationships one after another. Some years it was fighting. Some years it was, you know, Jesus. And some years it was chopping on myself, you know, suicidal. And it just depended. But now I have good coping mechanisms. I work a lot and I'm kind of a workaholic, and I know that that's not necessarily a good way to deal with things, but that it helps me focus because I'm in control. When I was in prison, I had no control of anything. I couldn't buy feminine hygienes if I wanted them. If I ran out, then, you know, I have to go and hopefully ask an officer to get some, or, you know, get donations from the dorm because you just don't have anything. I have a food and a money fear. I have too much in my pantry. I got a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house that I do not need because I want to have enough room to have all my stuff that I didn't have for all those years. And I want to work. I want to have money because I want to depend on me, not on anybody else. Whereas in prison, you have to depend on people who love you in the world and hope that people love you, you know, and hope that they have a job. And so that's how I've dealt with it. But I have a dog and I love my dog. And I live in Austin and I go to all the parks and I do things that make me happy. In addition to working, I have a boyfriend who I am ecstatic about. I got out and went to my husband, who I'd been with for, you know, on and off for 20 years. And it didn't work. We stayed together a year and a half and I left. I just decided that I wasn't going to be subjected to the same abuse and degradation and abandonment and stress that I went through my entire life. I wanted to have more. And so one thing that I've learned with my therapy is I've learned how to make healthy choices. And that's honestly the most important thing that prison taught me, really, is not even so much about coping mechanisms. It's just about learning how to make good choices, healthy choices, and understanding that whatever choice I make, there's going to be pros and cons. Which one am I willing to deal with and accept?
Yeah, that's I'm gonna agree on all of that. You know, I have seen a therapist, but I think
she just described you. Like you could almost,
like making
talking, I'm
oh
like,
God.
therapy.
Therapy.
She said workaholic. Do you know that everyone that I know out of prison that is thriving overworks themselves?
Oh yeah,
that's a coping mechanism that we all have in common, and control is why. To go on, I'm not going to interrupt you.
No,
again,
that's it. It is that sense of having control to finally be able to have control over my own decisions. And a lot of times I have very adverse reactions to anything that feels like I'm doing something that I don't want to do. And it can be very small, and I will have a strong reaction to it. And it's like, you know, a person in my life would say, you know, Jennifer, it's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, no, I am no longer doing things that I don't want to do. I don't give a damn if it's going to the ballet with you, or I don't care if it's going across the street to get a thing of toothpaste. If I don't want to do it right now, I'm not going to do it. And it's not because I don't care about you. It's not that I'm insensitive to your feelings. It's just I have such this unrelenting, unbending thing inside of me where I have had to spend 20 years doing shit that I don't want to do, under threat of not being able to see my family or have food. And the scarcity thing is real, Right. Like I almost have the opposite thing in terms of I have the littlest place I can find so I can feel like I'm cocooned in my cell. And I freak out about not having money or food because
Yeah.
I remember one time when I was living in Houston, the first time I got out, and my girlfriend at the time, I was in the bathroom making a list, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We need shampoo. We need this." She goes, "There's a half a bottle of shampoo here." And I said, "I've got the grocery list." She said, "Honey, I don't understand." I said, "Well, I don't want us to run out." She said, "Jennifer, the HEB in Houston is not going to run out of shampoo. I promise they're not." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But I had such a fear of of not having and that panic and that urgency. And the ways I cope with that are just, my friends, my community. Like the way I survived on the inside was y'all. Even if I didn't know you directly at the time, y'all know what I mean. It's the women that we did time with on the inside and outside now. They keep me from doing those bad decisions. Not be they're my voice of reason and conscience to keep me on the right path. When my therapist can't get a hold of me, Lori or Marcy or Maggie, they're going to make Diane, they're going to make sure that I don't go to prison because they see the things I'm saying or doing. And it is that community and a sense of humor, dark sense of humor. Marcy, you nail it every time you mention that, is because all that shit that we endured, and we're talking some horrific stuff that we haven't even gotten into, is that you just learn how to have a sense of humor about it. And it's funny at the time, and then you get out and you're like, "Hey, remember that? God, that was horrible." Like,
Yeah.
man, and we're laughing like, "Girl, watch me pull this tampon out." Woo, and it's like, right. And then it's like, it was to hide all of that, like rage and humiliation. And I think that even now I use a lot of dark humor. And people on the outside, they don't get that, y'all. They really don't. They think that, good Lord, you are so insensitive. And it's not that. It's really my way of handling stuff. And my cat, she's not on camera. I don't know where she's at, but if I could legally marry her in the state of Texas, I would marry that cat.
Yes. I love my dog. I love my dog.
Don't make it sordid, Lori, if you're watching. I just love my cat, and she really does bring me a lot of peace. So I think that's how I cope. Marcy, how do you?
There's something about cuddling with a pet when we haven't been able to have that cuddle time or touch time. I mean, Lainey, you were my cross bunkie, and we were good friends and excellent friends. Talk to each other as we fall asleep, kind of friends. Sit in our doorways and talk across the cubicles and all of
hours.
that. And how many times do you think we ever even hugged? Maybe
not often.
Maybe twice maybe. And that's maybe. That's maybe if one of us was real upset about something.
Yeah.
And we could get away with it, but we were really good friends, and we had no human contact. We didn't have any contact. So I think pets is for sure big coping, and that's something that just having something that you can hug and love on, and for sure, definitely my community of previously incarcerated individuals for absolute certainty are everything. And I'm fortunate enough to have a great family, and just that dark humor, like you said, I will sometimes say something I'll sometimes say something like at the dinner table, my brother and his wife and my parents will be there, and I'll mention something that I feel like is a little bit funny. And my brother, he'll call me out on it every time, because his face, he will just look at me with horror. Like he'll be like, "Oh my God." And then it'll make me think, "Oh yeah, that really was freaking horrible." And I was laughing at it because I don't want to admit to my spirit that it went through, that I had put myself through that, or the system put me through it, or, so.
It's because we normalized it so that we could deal with it. And what we've normalized, even now, there's some horrific things I see on TV and on the social media and everything, and it doesn't affect me like it does my coworkers at the dental office. It doesn't affect me like it does my in-laws and stuff. It doesn't affect me. It's just like, oh yeah, okay. And they're just horrified. And that's what we do. That's part of our coping mechanism, is we normalize horror.
Right.
And that's
like
the point.
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier, it's compartmentalizing. Those of us with childhood trauma, we already knew how to do that. So I know how to put this in a box and put it in my head, and maybe come up with different personalities to deal with it, or different self states to deal with it when I pull that box out. And then guess what? It goes back in there and it goes away on a shelf, and that's how I deal with it. Whether that's, my therapist said, honey, if it works for you and you're not in prison and you feel like your life is manageable and you're happy, then don't judge yourself. Just take it one step at a time. Well, we're on our hour.
We are. I have a final thought, just because both of you just said, just all of this that we're dealing with, and the desensitized kind of attitude that we have and outlook we have. And that's just one proven fact about people coming out of the penitentiary, how it is harmful for our communities, because these folks are getting treated not like humans. They are getting caged like animals, treated like animals, and then set out into our communities and expected to thrive. And we are the fortunate ones, because we had a big support system outside of, and that's just what things need to change. Thank you, ladies.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for having me. Good night. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
And thanks everyone for the nice comments. Y'all, good night.
Night.
Thanks, Lainey. Love
See y'all
you.
next
Bye.
week. Y'all meet us here on the Rec Yard next Wednesday.
Bye.
I'll be here.